Welcome back everyone to the Tales of Jesus. And if you were with me last time, you will have heard the story of what's known as the prodigal son or the lost son, also known as the loving father, or sometimes as the older son. I don't know how that story struck you. I don't know what it did in you. If you didn't hear the last episode, then go back and listen to the story, or indeed read it for yourself in Luke chapter 15 at verse 11. It is actually one of the most famous stories in the whole world. One of the great stories we remember of Jesus. There are others, and we hopefully will get to them in due course. But this is one of the biggies, one of the great ones. One thing we need to consider before we actually start looking in detail is just to remember that Jesus told these stories 2,000 years ago into a place and a culture that's very different from ours. So whilst lots of things are immediately understood, there are some things that need to be teased out and understood because they were of their time. Jesus told stories to people who knew their background. He didn't say abstract things. He told them their own life, about farming, about property, about religion of their time, about the weather, all kinds of things. And so we need to understand a bit of that to explore these stories. So in this part, looking at the prodigal son, I want to talk a little bit about the father. I don't know what your father is or was like. Sadly, we know today that there have been a number of fathers who have abused their position as a parent, both literally and metaphorically. You may have a father who you think of and actually it's terrible. Many of us, though, will think of our fathers with something like awe or even hero worship. Certainly that's what children tend to do. As we get older, we recognise that they have their flaws, they are human, just like we are. And in fact, as we get even older, we recognise perhaps that we take the position of our father and have to look after them. But fathers are always special. Fathers are always important. But what about the father in this story? The father in this story is actually one of the three key figures. There are three people, the father, the younger son and the older son, around whom the whole story revolves, as well as other characters in other places. Who is the father in this case? Well, as you read through the story, you begin to see that he is a man of property. He has a fattened calf. He has property that he gives to his sons. He also has servants or slaves, which means he is a man of means. He can pay their wages. So as we look at the father in the story, we see actually a man who is wealthy, has prominence. If we think of when Jesus was speaking, it was probably a village situation where he is like the village squire, the local lord, the man they look up to, the one who's important. And as we'll see, this is very important to the story. But it's also quite clear to anyone listening that the Father is in many ways like God. He is the one who is, if you like, in charge. He is the one who rules the roost. Which is why, when we read the story, and for those people then much more so, it is utterly shocking what he does. I'll get on next time probably to what the children were like. But when they ask for a share of the property, what does the father do? He should react in horror, and in that culture probably box them around the ears and throw them out of the house. Going to a Middle Eastern culture, in that kind of situation, what those sons are doing is saying, "Father, I wish you were dead. I want my inheritance now." And you ask any Middle Easterner today, Muslim or Jew, Arab, it doesn't matter. The response is the same. You have shamed me, you have shocked me, you have denied me. And I, as a father, will have nothing more to do with you until you turn around and do something better in the way you think. Because I am the father. I am the patriarch. It is me who calls the shots, not you. And as we look at this story, and again we're looking some depth later, the father does not do this. He shows nothing but love. We start the story with a basis that the father has power but also has love. And this is the kind of God that we look to. Jesus is telling a story about God and about us. How do you see God? If we call him Father, and Jesus says, call him Father, pray to him, our Father in heaven. He's not like our human father. Think of the best things in your human father and then magnify them and take away any of the bad things. He is a father who loves his children, who wants the best for them, but is willing to give them the freedom they need in order to be truly human. Pray today that we will know the Father himself, who is this loving, generous, gracious and sacrificial God.